get into it.
You a Star Wars guy, Noah? Do you watch Star Wars?
Big Star Wars guy.
Because this is reminding me, I don't know if you've watched the opening scene of The Force Awakens, where Kylo Ren is like smashing into that town, and then Poe comes out and tries to blast him, and they have this thing, and then Kylo walks up to Poe, and Poe's looking up at Kylo, and he goes, "So what do I do here? Do you talk first? Do I talk first? How does this work?" That's what just
And you
happened
get
with
and
me.
he gets no response
No, and that's what
because
just
we didn't
happened.
we didn't plan who talks first
No, we
because
have no
that doesn't
idea how
happen
this
in real
works.
situations.
We have no clue how this works because this is literally the first episode of the podcast.
Yeah, I we should probably fill people in on who we are and what this is.
Let's do it. You can go first, my friend.
Yeah, so as the graphic below me will show, I'm Noah Gannon. I'm the captain of the Wolfpack. I've been playing Guts Frisbee since I was 12 years old. If you don't know what that is, don't worry, we'll get into it.
What being
Um,
12 years old or what Guts Frisbee is?
being 12 years old, if you've never experienced it yet, we'll fill you in on what that looks like. Uh, and I'm joined by my good friend to my right, your left.
Hello, everyone. My name is Braden Galisic. I am a good friend of Noah's, also a member of the Wolfpack Guts Frisbee team. I have been playing this sport for, I think I did the math. I think I did the math correctly. Last year was my 10th year of being involved in the sport one way or another, um, because of when we met and how we met, which we will get to in a second. But yeah, I think I've been around the game for about 10 years.
Yeah, so we've been around it a long time. Braden and I met in high school, so we were in marching band together. I'm a trumpet, Braden's a trombone, instant connection.
That
Followed
brass
that up,
thing,
brass family stands together,
the brass goes
and
so
then
hard.
dude, so good. And then we started playing tennis together. That's where the third member of our trio, who will eventually be a guest, Luke McCarthy, joins the picture.
Which I
And the
actually don't
three
know
of
if we've
us,
talked to Luke about this before. So, Luke, this is your first time knowing you will be a member of, you will be a guest of this show at some
yeah.
point.
So Luke, you don't know it yet, but big plans for you in this podcast.
Huge plans, Luke.
Um, but so we kind of bonded quickly, played tennis together in high school, spent a lot of time playing Hearthstone at the McDonald's in our hometown. And then I got Luke and Braden reluctantly into Guts Frisbee around that same time. Braden, how long from your first practice did it take you to really like consistently want to go?
A long time. And there's one reason and one reason for that only. And its name is Cam Varigan. That's so so practices in the Bothwell gym when I first started with you, me, Cam, your brother, and like Mullet. The sole reason I did not look forward to going to practices was because Cam Varigan threw so hard. My whole thought process was Cam, just don't hit me. Cam, just don't hit me. Just don't hit me, Cameron. Um, it probably took a full year or two to finally be like, oh, I actually love this sport a lot. Um, and a big reason for that is you dragging me to practices, which I'm forever grateful for because I've met so many great people and teammates through this sport, and have the Guts community is just incredible. But yeah, it took me a long time solely because Cam Varigan um, threw so hard. 14-year-old me was like, no, I'm not doing this ever again. And then I fell in love with the sport.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. Like whenever I talk to somebody in public and I explain to them what the sport is and what we do, and they're like, "That's fun. Like it's enjoyable to get plastic thrown at you." Um, Braden and I here are both goalies from hockey, so I think that helped us out a little bit. That mentality of like stopping rubber is also fun.
Yeah, we're
But
psychos.
yeah,
We like getting in the way of
it
things.
takes a while to kind of find the joy and adrenaline of having plastic thrown at you. I know in my first tournament when I was like 13 and I was playing in my first IFT, Sunday morning we were warming up and I got hit square in the middle of the nose by a frisbee and started bleeding. And I ran up to my dad because I didn't know what to do. And his response, as my dad's been a legend of the sport, but played forever, and he just looks at me and he goes, "Don't tell your mom; she won't let you play anymore."
Which that's
So
such a
I was,
Dan Gannon response.
yeah, and
That's
we hope to eventually have him on the podcast, but, like, it was,
Because
I
he
got a
is.
handkerchief, like, got told to wait till it stops bleeding and then get on the line to keep playing in, like, a very positive way.
That's awesome. I
Um,
did not know that. I didn't know that about you.
but yeah, once you take a Frisbee in the face, like, it gets less scary.
It
Uh,
does. Yes. Yes.
but yeah, so that was kind of our origins, at least of initially starting to play, and then we founded our current team, the Wolfpack, probably when I was getting into college around, like, 2016, 2017.
Hold on, I'm gonna stop you right there. Don't say we, because I had nothing. This was you. This was I had nothing to do with this. This was all
I should rephrase. I'm being modest. I dragged Luke and Braden to get a team together after they played on a very notorious team
oh
that
my
was
god.
3 Lukes, 2 Connors, and a Braden,
Yeah.
which goes
Togos.
down in Guts lore as the most people with the same name and a Braden on a Guts team ever. But we've been playing as the Wolfpack ever since. Sometimes we have some fun team names at less important tournaments like Hands Depot.
Which you
We've been
guys
sponsored by
we have
my
aprons for
company a couple
those, by the way.
times. Yeah, we'll bring out the aprons for Hands Depot at some point. But yeah, that's kind of our trajectory. As you can read at the bottom, Braden was the MVP at last year's U.S. National Championship. That was our first win as a team. So it
Which,
took
hold on a minute.
us a
So
decade to get
long.
there.
So long. Like, I don't know if I've won minor tournaments. That might have been my first tournament win, period. Like, I don't know if I've ever won a Hancock Classic.
Yeah, I think for most of, like, at least our Wolfpack core, I think that's like a very big first for us.
Yeah.
Of not just like a big tournament, but like anything outside of like a practice hat tournament. Um, but yeah, that's where we're at now. Um, we're gonna link below too in the video, to the actual USA Guts website if you're looking to get involved or want to know more about the sport too. We'll also have a YouTube link to the official rules video of the sport. But we're gonna kind of get into a little example for you guys of what the sport is, talk about the rules of it, give you an example of what it looks like.
And that would be right now. Which, oh, hey, look at that. It's nowhere
Hey, yeah, I was gonna pull out my Wolfpack jersey to wear for the first episode, and then remembered that the new jerseys are with you, and my jersey is currently in Japan.
Yes, yes. Which, yes, I completely forgot about that. Um, and I suppose for those of you that don't know, Noah wears number one. He's on the left side of the screen. I am number 89. And that kind gentleman that I was talking about at the beginning of the video, his name is Cameron Varigan. This is him with the frisbee right now.
Yeah, so if you want to talk full circle, the fact that Cam stopped Braden from basically wanting to play Guts for a year when he was younger, and now he's handing him a shot in the finals of a tournament is
Yeah, that's
a
pretty damn cool.
crazy full circle. Like,
Yeah,
I
I do.
remember Cam was the only other kid when we started playing because we play. He's a year older than I am, and we started playing a year apart from each other. And he was so good, so fast that like I was also intimidated. But my older brother played, and my dad played, so they were like, "You got to keep playing. You got to keep playing." But yeah, it's crazy full circle that 10 years later, Cam's playing with us on the Wolfpack in this
Yeah,
finals of a tournament.
yeah, that is pretty insane. I do think about that frequently. All right. So this was the start of the second game of last year's finals. Um, the score is 0-0, which I suppose, Noah, do you want to just give a rundown on how like the back and forth kind of works?
Yeah, so Guts Frisbee is a sport that's played 5 people on your team at a time. Your team can have more than 5 people, but there are only 5 active players. The other team has 5 other active players. And the basics of the sport are one person on our team is going to be throwing at the 5 people on the other team. We are standing 15 yards apart. And then the defending team stands with their hands completely fingertip to fingertip outstretched. And then the other basics of it are whoever catches the frisbee on the other team is the one who's going to throw back. If the team doesn't catch it, the throwing team gets a point. And the wrinkle that you'll see here in a second in the video is you can only catch the frisbee with one hand. Uh,
That's a big part of it.
just for sake of speed, you'll see it live time, but frisbees will travel up to and upwards of 80 miles an hour. If you compare it to like a baseball from 15 yards away. Like the reaction time is really short. And then you don't have to catch the frisbee straight on. You can also knock the frisbee in the air, and a teammate can catch it. Um, the other rule there too is it just can't touch two body parts at the same time. So it can't have the frisbee on my chest and my hand. That would be considered an illegal catch. But let's get this video rolling. Give people an idea of what an MVP looks like.
Hello. Yeah, so this is first shot, and you have to throw from behind. There's a line on the ground that maybe you can't see, but you have to you can't step over that line, otherwise it's what's called a foot fault.
Um,
So I scored. It's now 1-0 us, and I hit Derek Stone, and the other team is now throwing back.
so what Braden just threw was called the staker. Over time, we're going to kind of break down shots more, especially in the off season, what they look like, etc. Derek's throwing a more traditional backhand, as you see in disc golf or ultimate frisbee. Um, a lot of players will turn around to get more speed. Derek's one of those players. He's got a really fast backhand. Um, so as you can see too, there's a big crowd watching this, especially for it being a finals.
Yeah, finals are always. Oh, and I
And
caught
what
him.
Braden just did there, it's called a bag. That's why it's called the bag zone.
The bag zone. Well, that one wasn't in the bag zone.
It wasn't in the bag zone, and we'll talk about the bag zone at some point. But right now, it's a mystery.
Right now, it's a mystery.
But yeah, so anytime you catch a frisbee straight on as a clean catch, that's considered a bag for a little bit of guts nomenclature. But
And that's no points. If you catch the disc, it's good defense essentially. So the score remains 1-0 because we cleanly caught the frisbee. And now since I
something
caught
else.
it, I get to throw back.
Yep. So we get to watch Braden throw again.
Hey,
You can
Will,
see another member of the community, Will Blau, hyping Braden up.
love Will.
We're very closely connected in the Guts community. Like we know everyone on every team. Like this is a big social weekend whenever we have tournaments with each other. So it's not uncommon when you're playing in big matches to interact with the crowd a lot.
Oh, and that's one of my favorite parts. I
Yeah, and that's what
love,
makes it great. Like
yeah.
it's a big family. Like it's like getting together with all your cousins and just throwing plastic around.
Oh, it's so awesome. What were you guys talking about back there?
I think we were talking about the defensive positioning. You can see the other team is changing their lineup. So one thing about how substitutions happen as we watch Braden throw again is the same five people have to stay on for a switch. Every 11 points scored, the teams will switch sides. So the same five people have to keep playing, but where they stand on the line can change every shot. So there's a lot of strategy involved in the game in terms of if the other team is trying to throw at one person, because if you score on them, they have to throw back. So maybe targeting a weak shot, or for example, someone doesn't have good hands necessarily, or you don't think that they can catch our team. Like we're going to want to pick on that person. So the defending team can also do some strategies to move around where that person is on their line. But you can't remove that player from the game until we get to a switch.
Yep, which is important thing to note. So I'm going to back up a few seconds here, just so we can talk through what happened. So I threw a shot, and what's going on here is Derek jumped out and said it was short, but the two gentlemen on their knees, that's Ryan Scott and Bert, love both of you. They were having a conversation on whether or not where the disc hit, essentially. So think of it, um, the disc cannot land before the other team's line, otherwise it's what's considered a dump, and that would be it's a bad shot. So what works there, if I throw a bad shot, whether it hits the dirt short, or I throw it way above someone's fingertips, or I hit someone in the crowd 5 feet to my right, um, it is a bad shot. The opposing team gets a point, and they get to choose who throws back, which is crazy because then you essentially just give it to your best shooter. And
Yeah,
I,
so we've always considered a dump kind of a 1.5 to a 2 point swing for the defending team. So that's something where an illegal shot can really sway whether or not your team, has momentum, or in a big moment like that can be crushing. Think of
yeah,
it like a big turnover in like a football game. Um,
yep,
but so how these kind of disagreements work out. We'll see a couple of them in this clip. So their team's talking it over. They decide to call it a good shot, saying that the frisbee hit at or behind their line. Um, so the person who was thrown at, which is Ryan Scott, gets to throw back at our team.
And that's another big thing about Guts, and what you'll see here in a second is the officiating for most of the time until you get into later rounds is self officiated. So Noah and I are used to this because high school tennis,
Oh,
very
big
self
self affiliation.
officiated.
Now we're about to see a little bit of a difference in the finals. Typically, if we can't agree, both captains will meet in the middle, talk about what each team saw. For any ultimate players, it's very similar to how you self officiate games. Instead of just being the two players who are involved in the interaction, the captains will meet together. Normally, we just rethrow this. If we couldn't agree, our team thought that the shot was wide. Their team said that it was a good shot inside of my reach. If we couldn't agree, then we would just rethrow with the person who was throwing. Um, Later rounds in the tournament, we have what are called observers. And Brain, you can just keep it rolling here because I think
Yep.
we're about to call them in. So basically, both teams can agree to call in the observers. And at this point, after the captains ask for their opinion, they basically are officials. So they're going to make a determination on
Yeah.
whether or not it was a good shot or an illegal shot.
So
So
you
you
can
can
see
see we're
Noah.
talking to them right
Yep.
now. Shout outs to Donnie and Brownie, who have
Back.
officiated several tournaments of ours.
Yeah.
Um,
Legends.
they ended up calling that a good shot. So the person that it was scored on, which would be me in this circumstance, gets to throw back. Um, Other than that, typically observers don't get called in much. I think typically like once or twice a game in the finals. Um, but it's an important part of the game. It's something that without it, we'd be here for hours arguing over things. As much as sportsmanship's important in the game. And you can see there, like our opposing team just made another switch, kind of dependent upon the individual shot itself coming back. I'm throwing what's called a thumber here. Terrible on your elbow, but looks great when it goes well. Shoutouts to Cam.
Shout out to
Love
Cam
it, the
Berrigan.
Selly.
And then basically what happens there is you play the game first to 21, win by two.
Yep, like we said, every 11 points you switch sides. As we found out in Australia last year, wind can be a really important factor in the games.
Big
Sunlight,
factor.
whether there's reflections off a car's light. So depending upon what side you're on, can be very important. So we like to switch at every 11 points scored total. So like the most common switch would be one team has 6 points, one team has five. Not the first to reach 11 points.
Correct.
And then the last thing to talk about in terms of illegal shots is the notion of vertical. So I've got a guts disc here in front of me. This is what it looks like. So typically, if you're going to throw a backhand, you've got this flat disc here, and the angle can come up, up, up. When as soon as it gets straight up and down or 90 degrees, and we have the underside of the disc here, that's considered a vertical shot. Um, so it can approach 90. This is okay. Once it gets straight up and down or past it, we would call that vertical. And then same thing as if you throw it short before the line, or as Braden said, you hit someone in the crowd or something like that. The receiving team gets a point, and then they get to choose who throws back. So those are some of the basics of Guts Frisbee. Like we said, check out the information that we'll have linked below in this episode to get started. Also, reach out to USA Guts if you're somebody who wants to start getting into the game and doesn't really know how. Um, Whether that's we'll send you frisbees, we'll find the closest people who play, um, or just give you some encouragement to start throwing frisbees at your friends until they get angry enough to catch it.
Get on the
Um,
line.
it works. But yeah, that's our wonderful sport. I could say it's been a big defining part of my life, from the friends I've made to the places I've gotten to travel, the people I've gotten to meet. And the more you get involved with it, the more you learn to love it. Braden, as I think, as your trajectory the last couple years could support.
Yeah, I've absolutely fallen in love with the sport. Um, and again, the community of Guts Frisbee players is so awesome. The people I've met, and the places I've been to. Like we were just in New Zealand and Australia. You know how crazy that
Yeah,
is?
they
For a
have
game where we
the
throw plastic at each other. Are you
right.
serious?
There's always like the welcome to the big leagues moment that they talk about. Like football players talk about like the first time they got hit by like Ray Lewis or someone like that. Like, do you have a like welcome to guts moment where like that first time where you had a big bag or like a layout catch where you were like, "Oh, I get it now." Like I've had that moment that you're just chasing.
It might be I might have recency bias because it just happened or it has just been happening, but I still think that full circle moment of I went from being terrified and idolizing this player when I first started to he's now on my team and we just won a championship together. That being Cam Berrigan. Shout out Cam again. What up? Like that's pretty special. I still because we've played with him for a couple of years now, um, and that to me is still very special and something
Yeah.
that I hold near and dear. Um, Also, going to Australia and competing in Worlds was pretty nuts.
Yeah, I like
Pretty nuts. Which we'll get into that. We'll have
yeah,
a
that's
separate
gonna be a
video for
whole
that.
episode itself on the
Yeah,
Australia
dude.
trip. We've got lots of pictures and stories to share from it. I haven't even like been able to unpack that experience yet.
Your
Um,
bags are actually still.
yeah, there's still my suitcase has never been unpacked. I just bought new clothes and have been
Uh,
living out of it separately. But I remember the first time that we got to a winners finals when I
oh
was
yeah.
playing with Tanner Beckman, who was on our championship team, and our good friend Jericho. And I got moved in for the first time. Like when I was younger, I was always an end player in big games, and they moved me into the middle against the Appleton Assassins, who have been the best team in the last decade plus.
Dominant, dude.
And I bagged Josh Tews, who has one of the craziest shots of all time. And I was like, "Oh, I've made it! Like I'm participating in an important role in a big game." And I was so amped, I immediately dumped my next shot 10 feet over their heads.
I I have a very
But
similar story.
but the
Uh,
moment before that, like that feeling that like, oh, I am like we are in this, like we are playing. You almost like can taste the adrenaline in your mouth.
yeah,
Like it's great.
yep, yeah. I have a very similar story. We were in USGO few years ago now, um, and we were also playing a team full of Appleton guys. I don't know if it was still the Assassins or not, but I closed my eyes and prayed, and I bagged John Ludke on one of the dippiest backhands I've ever seen. To this day, I still don't know how I caught it. But I bagged it, and then that adrenaline brought me to a place where I think my shot started, and less than halfway to the line, it just hit the floor. And then I think you benched me for the rest of that game.
That sounds about right.
I think you
That's
did.
a
I think you pulled me
great
out of that
captain's
game.
decision. Yeah, yeah, that sounds about right. And we'll get into many of these stories as the podcast goes on. We plan on having a lot of guests in the future. Kind of looking forward to what you can expect from us. We want to get a lot of members of the Guts community, and we're going to be doing a lot of stuff to get new content out there and share this sport that we love with as many people as possible. Braden, you want to run down a little bit of kind of what the schedule is going to look like
I
for people
absolutely,
so they know where to expect us?
yeah. So as of right now, we plan on during what we call the off season. So that's out of tournament time since our tournaments run in the summer. It will be one every 2 weeks. We plan to do recordings on Mondays or Tuesdays, or like today, it's a random Saturday, just because we're we're here and we're just like let's just
We
do it.
can.
Let's just do it. I don't know. So off season will be one every 2 weeks. In the season, starting relatively soon, we plan on having one every week with videos releasing on Thursdays. Um, and then so like the episode before a tournament, we'll have like tournament previews. The episode immediately following tournaments, which will be nice because Monday the tournament will still be fresh in our mind. We'll do like a tournament recap. We'll talk about what happened. And then during there, we'll just find fun interviews. We'll find good topics. We've got some funny segments planned out that I'm super excited for. But as of right now, one every 2 weeks until we get into the seasons, one every week, or however much I can handle on top of my job and editing these videos.
Yep, that's pretty much it. Um, Also, we're still working on setting up the socials. You can find us at the Bag Zone on YouTube, which is where these videos are going to be dropped. Our personal socials for people who know us will probably be blasting the links to it.
Yep.
Eventually, we'll set up probably like a Twitter and an Instagram. someday so we can share all of the very funny pictures we have from Australia
Oh yes.
and hold that over some people. Um, Despite this being our first episode, Braden, I do have a fan question for you.
Oh, great.
Um,
Yes. So at the end of
from a good friend
episodes,
of ours, Johnny Blade, who is a legend in the sport,
hey Johnny,
best
thank you.
friends with Tom Marisich. And Johnny Blade wants to know simply, like, why, dude? Why do it? Like, why put
First,
yourself out there?
first off, Johnny Blade, thank you for the question. Really, really appreciate you reaching out.
Big fans.
Big fan. I know how busy you are on your adventures and everything, but appreciate the question. Why? I think just because we love this sport so much, and we want to see it succeed and grow and get even bigger than it is right now, which is still it's really good. But we just want to see it grow. I think we love the sport enough to where we aren't gonna get annoyed with each other. Uh, Meeting
It
once a
hasn't
week
happened in the first 10
has
years. I don't think it's going to happen
no,
now.
no. I think we'll be okay. But I think my answer to this question is, and I don't want to speak for both of us, but I'm going to speak for both of us for the time being, is we just love the game and we want to talk about it and we want to share these experiences in hopes that more people can have similar experiences and fall in love with this game that we've known for a decade now.
Yeah, and to build on that, my why is I don't even remember. Like, I feel like this memory is combining 5 years. But the International Frisbee Tournament, which is our oldest tournament, it's kind of like our Rose Bowl. Like, we've driven up to it together with my dad for probably the past 5 years, the morning of the tournament. And like, it's 2 hours from our hometown. And it is the perfect amount of time to where, like, we just get to sit and talk about Frisbee and like past tournaments, like discuss great players, discuss what we think's going to happen, and like those moments of just talking about Frisbee and like reminiscing on it are almost as good as playing it itself.
Yeah,
Like it's almost that extra part. And like I want to be able to share those conversations and give, ideas or other platforms for people to have these Frisbee conversations that like we get to enjoy on an annual basis. And also an excuse to just talk about Frisbee more and hope that
true.
people like
That's
it.
yes. Always, there's always an excuse. We have something I'm going to rub in quick before we log off. Is here in Marquette we have, even during the off season now, we were able to get practices once a week, which
Must be nice.
Noah is just a little too far of away for where his practices are downstate. Um, but I always find myself like looking forward to Sundays, and then those 2 hours from 10 to 12 where it's frisbee, and then the second I step out of that gym, I'm already looking forward to next Sunday's practice. Um, and I've had that for the past, okay, I'll say the past 8 years now, because the first 2 years was I don't want to get hit by plastic, but no, it's been great. That's I just love it, and we want to share it. And I think what better time than the present?
Yeah, I will add, if you've never heard of Guts Frisbee, look it up. It's really fun. If you've heard of it, but for one reason or another never tried it before, give it a chance. If you've tried it once and you didn't like it, I promise you will like it more the second time.
Yeah,
I just got my best friend to agree to come to a tournament. Like I threw frisbees at him once in college, and he wasn't ready yet. But like now he's gonna join us for the first tournament this year in Wisconsin. So like reach out to your friends, like keep trying to get them involved. Like the more people we have, the more fun it's going to be. And just like this podcast, like I now, Braden, I'm going to speak for you. I know we're both super pumped to see where this sport's going.
yeah. And if you're an old head and have been around the sport for a while, welcome. Most of you will probably have contacts to either myself or Noah. So if you have a question or input or anything, please reach out. We'll be happy to listen to any sort of criticisms or comments. Or if you just have a question you'd like answered, fire it away.
Yeah, we're going to have a
Fire it away.
very robust Q&A coming
Yeah.
someday. So yeah, feel free to hit us with your questions. Until next time, everyone. It's been good. Go Guts.
And we'll figure out a better outro for next time.
Yeah.